Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second series of academic job panel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Setare, currently the president of the Informs Student chapter at UB, and it's my pleasure to host this panel today with our esteemed panelists who are alumni of ISE department at UB, Dr. Zhiyuan Wei, who is currently an assistant professor at California Polytechnic State University, Dr. Aditya Chivate, who is currently the assistant professor again at California Polytechnic State University, and Dr. John Becker, who is currently the assistant professor at United States Naval Academy. Welcome to all three of you. Thanks for joining us for this panel today. It's really exciting to meet you again and connect with you, and thanks for accepting to share your insights on academic job panels. I'll give you each like a few minutes if you'd like to introduce yourself better, and I'll stop sharing so that we can have you all in full screen.
Sure, I can start. Thanks again, Saturday, for organizing this event. It's good to see some familiar faces. It's just good to see you virtually. So my name is Zhiyuan Wei. I just graduated from the UB Department ISE this May and currently assistant professor at the Car Poly. And this is actually my third week of teaching, so I'm kind of still new being in this role. Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay, I can. Okay, Johnny, if you want to go next, you can please.
Oh, sure. I'll go. I'm John Becker. I just graduated, I guess, or whatever the word is, back in roughly May, or I guess in June. By the time it actually happened, I defended. I've been here since they started us about July 15th to get settled in, but we've been teaching since like middle of August. So we're about 7 or 8 weeks in now, which is pretty fun.
Great to have you here. Thanks.
Hi, I am Aditya Chivate. I also graduated in May, and I'm at Cal Poly. So, in my third week, still navigating through the nuances of teaching as well as the new role.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. So the agenda for today is first we'll go through a few questions on how to prepare to apply. And after that, we'll move towards the interview process and the details on that. And later we'll discuss some additional topics and considerations. And also we are open to questions from the audience. So starting from the first question, I'll go in an alphabetical order of your first names. So starting with Aditya, when is the best time to start preparing the application materials like CV, research statement, teaching statements for the applications? You're muted.
So generally the applications open up in late July through September, and they are open till many a times till late February. But they start going through the applications either on rolling basis or like after a set deadline, and those deadlines are generally later November or early December. So it's better to have the application material ready by end of July or say mid-August, so that you have enough time to tweak it according to the university that you're applying to.
Thanks for sharing. And by the way, just another point, if I'm gonna ask most of the questions from either one of you, but if the other people have anything to add, please jump in. You're more than welcome to. Thank you.
Yeah, I have something I'd like to add to that. With like, I felt some of the research material. I mean, some of the application materials like took a lot longer to prepare than you might initially expect. And in fact, it's really never too early to start, because at least having something to work with and like a living document you can kind of change and alter is really valuable. Especially, you need, for a lot of positions, you need a cover letter, you need a teaching statement, you need a research statement, you may or may not need like a diversity statement. There's like 4 different ones you have to read and write, and they each require kind of a different sort of topic you have to do. And for me, I found it difficult because you almost are trying to sell yourself. And but also like selling yourself very concisely, because you get like a page or like a page and a half to do it sometimes. And I guess you also have to put your CV together and like figuring out how to write that and tailoring it and changing it. And also as you, it can be really difficult. And the other thing is that it can provide like a nice opportunity if you're not sure what you want to do and why you want to do it. It can be almost a nice exercise in figuring out like, what do you want to do and why do you care? What's your goal? It can, if you're worried about like, well, I'm starting it too early, but if you're also thinking, I don't know what I'm doing, it can be a nice opportunity. But I'd say it's never too late. I mean, but I would recommend starting at like January of the year you're applying, like at the latest almost, personally, because I mean, it just took me a long time to get it written, or otherwise you'll be kind of cramming to get it done and you probably won't want feedback from people. And over the summer, a lot of professors, they go on vacation or something else. So you might miss them for 2 weeks and you can get yourself into a pickle. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you for sharing. And also for students joining from UB, like there is a center called Excellence for Writing. You can also book some meetings with them, check your writings with them, and make sure like the draft of your statements are written professionally. And also there are some other different types of events going on to help you draft your statement on like diversity, which is sometimes new to some people, and like it can really be helpful to know how to address these topics too. Okay, John, did you tailor your application materials for each institution you were applying to?
Yeah, at the very least, if I was talking about teaching something or anything else, an easy tailoring thing you can do with a lot of your applications is, especially teaching side, I say, okay, I'm interested in teaching these courses. I can develop them for the department. This is what I can do. Yeah, generally you want to. The other thing you want to do if they ask for a cover letter is you want to, alter it a bit so it actually addresses the department you're talking to. And then it also shifts depending on what kind of institution you're applying to. If you're applying to an R1, so you think of those research-intensive universities like UB and whatnot that are really focused on research and less focused on teaching. And then there's also usually a service commitment, but their ordering of importance and responsibilities are like research, teaching, service. You want your documents to kind of reflect that, and especially your cover letter. You'll speak a lot to your research there, and then talk a little bit about your teaching, and then say, okay, this is all for the department. I'm helpful around the department. But you'll tailor those essentially to who the department is, and you want to make sure you alter it at the small level to be like, hey, I'm talking to this department or this person, and not like, dear reader. And it's like, okay, well, they didn't want to put the effort in. But there's like small little things at the very least you want to make sure you address and can make it seem personalized, even if you're sending out 50 different ones. But you change like the last 2 sentences of your teaching statement to say, at your department, this is what I want. Like if you're applying to a management school, they'll have different course opportunities. So a way you can look at that is look into their course catalog, see what they have, see what you can teach, see if there's a gap that's missing, and go from there. May or may not be too much sometimes, but I think if you're interested in it, it's useful, and it also gives you something to talk with them about if they decide to talk to you.
Very helpful, thank you. So the next question is from everyone. How did you find potential positions, and what criteria did you use to select the institutions and positions you applied to?
I can start with that. So generally, Academic Keys is a very good kind of source to find all of the available openings and or higher ed jobs. So there you can essentially see all of the positions that are open till when they'll be open and what are the like general requirements. Sometimes they also mention the hiring committee or like who the hiring chair will be. So that can like give you a sense of what the chair is like and how can you tailor your application or how can you tailor your profile to suit what he is looking for. So that's something that you definitely need to do. And as for the universities, some universities are very new, so they are always hungry for new professors. So you can like, if you want to keep them as a safe bet, generally apply to those universities, and you will more likely get at least an interview call from them, and then you can decide from there on.
Great, thank you. John, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I can go next. So I think I keep the two criteria in my mind when I apply for different universities. The first one is fit, whether this job position is relevant to my research or what kind of the resources that the university department can provide to facilitate my research. And are they looking for some skills that I already have? So this is about the first criteria that in my mind fit. The second one is really about location. Make sure that you check where the university is located. Do you like the weather there? Do they have, the nearest, the biggest city? For example, I'm Asian. I'm most looking for the Asian market. Do they have the Asian market in the city? So yeah, that is the two criteria. The first one is a fit, and the second one is, the location.
Great points, thanks. Do you guys remember how many applications did you submit?
I submitted about 25 applications.
And like out of that, like how many interviews you got? We want
Uh,
to see the
oh
share.
yes, I have submitted about 25 applications. I got about eight phone interviews and four on-site interviews. But I just went to three of them, got offer from three of them, and I chose one.
Awesome. Do you want, John? Do you want to share?
I'm maybe not the best example. I really maybe seriously submitted like two or three applications, and I sent maybe five out total. I was a little pickier about, like, I knew what I wanted, and I located the universities that I knew seemed like a good fit, and applied to those, and then was like, well, I'll do what I need to do after that. And luckily, it worked out well. But I'm not necessarily. I would recommend, again, part of it starting earlier, identify the places you want to go, and take time to do that. Especially like if you're going for things other than R1s, it can be sometimes more challenging to find a reputable list. At least I found it so, but I think there are clearly good resources out there.
So for me, I may not be the best example. I applied around just 20 universities, I guess, because I was quite selective about the university that I'm applying for, meaning that if they just give me the offer, I would definitely go. Luckily, I just got one, and that one is currently the Car Poly.
Great. Happy for all of you, actually. Were there any workshops you on seminars or like training sessions that helped you prepare for the whole application process?
Yeah, there are multiple workshops or job panel discussions. I think the one that I went last year actually in the Informs in Phoenix.
Okay.
So if you are attending the Informs this year in Seattle, make sure that you just check agenda to attend those workshops or panel discussions. So the one that I went last year that was very helpful. There, although the new faculty, they just went through this entire process, so they can just give you the detailed information what the job search look like, what what the skills or strategies that you can prepare. Another one that I also utilized is the POMS. I think the job search panel. If you just search through the YouTube, I'm pretty sure you can find the previous offerings. So I believe they also have the job search panel this year by POMS. And also, I think the sector you just mentioned, the Writing Center, that is the one online resource, on-campus resource I utilized a lot. So just make sure that I have another pair of eyes to help me to look into my different documents in my package, make sure there's no grammar errors. I think those are the different resources I utilized. I'm not sure if John or Aditya want to add more.
I didn't really go to any workshops or anything that I recall too much. But what I did do instead was I talked to a lot of faculty members, especially people that are involved in like hiring committees and whatnot, both inside and outside of UB, to kind of get an idea of, okay, what are you looking for, and what makes up a good packet, and like I got their help reviewing some of my documents. But I mean, in all honesty, I lucked out I didn't necessarily intentionally seek out hiring committees. It was like I was talking to someone else about it, and they overheard and said, "Oh, like here's something important for you to know, and here's like some documents you can work with, and alter and kind of go from there." Because it's like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. for a lot of these things. There's certain formats, there's certain like things they're looking for, and sometimes you need to play it safe inside of those bounds, or it's recommended to, so they know what they're looking for.
That's very helpful. Yeah, thank you. And is it like common to like take some extra measures when you are applying? Like after submitting your application, do you recommend reaching out to the committee to maybe just shoot them an email, mention I applied, nice. It would be nice to like visit you in a conference, or like looking forward to talking to your team, things like that. Would you recommend taking these steps too?
I'll take
So
this.
my experience was like very different in this regard. I emailed a few, and a few of them had like very short but not so great replies. So after that I stopped emailing the committees, but my others might have better experiences.
My general experience is like, I think if you have a legitimate question to talk with them about, then they're happy to work with you on that or answer it, or they're interested. Or like if you have something going on that you're like, hey, I got this offer or anything else, like, can you speed it up or anything else like that, they'll talk with you. But I think there are also places like, I know like the Naval Academy and whatnot, they have very strict rules about like when they can talk to people, how they can talk with them, what can be said. And I think that follows with a lot of institutions, really, that they have to be pretty strict about how they can interact with candidates, especially before applications are reviewed. So a lot of times it might be more annoying for them than anything. I don't know if it'll sway them one way or another, but yeah, I mean, when in doubt, I would only really reach out when I had a real question I needed answered. Or if you were interested in the job and you're like, what is it like? What is it like here? That's a real question to ask the committee. Not necessarily just what is it like, but if you're like, hey, what is this sort of thing? Like, what's going on here? But I would say really have a real question you want to ask. Don't just do it to seem cool.
I also have another tip. If you are attending the Informs this year, and also you can see your search committee at Informs, make sure that you just shoot them an email to schedule the meeting in advance. I think that would be also the good opportunity, just to see your search committee or search committee members at Inform in person.
Great.
I may be jumping the gun here, but to get back to the workshops, it might be related to the workshops and whatnot, but like Informs, I think, is very valuable because it is where like everybody is. And connections are very valuable, especially if you don't make them, too aggressively for promoting yourself. But if you just kind of are in the right spots and happen to talk to the right person, it's remarkably valuable. Just being out there, it's exhausting, but it pays dividends.
Yeah, and depends so much on luck. I hope everyone who is on the job market this year is lucky to meet the right people at the right moment. Okay, moving to the next part, which is more specifically regarding the interview process. So, John, Aditya, you told me about the like time where applications are open. So, can you also talk about the overall timeline from submitting applications to finally receiving the job offers? Like, around which time of the month you should expect an interview, like initial interview, around which time you should expect that site visit maybe, and then around which months you should expect the final job offer.
Oh, so generally speaking, the on-site, like the phone interviews happen either in like say mid-December or in mid-January, because this is considering that we have a Christmas vacation, then there is like finals week. So January is the time when most of the search committee is light on teaching load or like light on research load. So they tend to finalize the applications and get the phone interview process done by around end of January. For me, all of my phone interviews were done, most of my phone interviews were done by end of January. Then if you are selected for on-site interview, they will like let you know around mid of February, and the on-site interviews will be generally in February or first week of March, no later than that. Like it's not likely to have phone interview or on-site interviews later than um, March, and then you will get the final offer around end of March or like third week of March, and you have about 10 days to accept or reject it. But sometimes some of these universities, they hire, like, shortlist three candidates, they give them an offer, but none of them accepts the offer. So in that case, they will like reopen the revisit the application pool, and they will like schedule some other on-site and phone interviews. So that happened to two of the universities. I believe I was not shortlisted in their first in the first go, but they reached out to me around mid-April or late April for the interviews. So that's also possible. So sometimes the hiring also takes place till like mid-May.
Thank you for sharing. Any other points?
I think that generally tracked with the experience I had. I think there are some that are really early and some that are really late. Like I know for here, everything was like I think I was offered the job like the first week of January, which is I think really early. Conversely, I think I knew of some that like hadn't even finished reviewing before like the first week of February. Like hadn't started reviewing applications yet until then. So it was like it's just kind of a bizarre amount of time. And yeah.
Happy
Also,
for you.
I did want to add, I think something that Aditya mentioned, but like I had the experience that although I expected a lot of jobs to be open between July and September, there were also a lot of jobs that like didn't open until like October, like middle of October or like November. So like if you, especially if there's a job that you are looking for and whatnot, it may take a long time for like, I don't know why. I don't really understand the cycles fully. I do feel like R1s tend to open up earlier, and some other institutions seem to be listing them later. That's what I noticed that year at least, but I'm not totally sure on what the trend is.
Gotcha.
I want to make sure we circle back to that. So
yeah. So while we are with you, John, what are the different types of interviews conducted for initial screening? So Aditya mentioned phone interviews, but I want to know, like, if there are like different types of them. Like some I've heard this are scheduled during the informs, for example. Like these are what I'm looking for, basically.
Yeah. So the general structures that I understand are like you'll have a phone. Sometimes if you have places like informs or a conference, you'll have an opportunity to you'll be called for an interview there. There are some institutions that do that, some that don't. Like the Naval Academy, I think can't actually, like legally, but that's kind of a different matter. But a lot of times the first time anymore will be like a phone interview or like a Zoom interview. I think the first one I did was a Zoom interview. Let me just ask some questions, and at least on my end, again, this might be because it's a federal institution. They have like I think it's generally they'll have like a set of questions they want to go through that like are very structured. That could feel like, okay, we have to ask this, we have to ask this. But those can usually delve into other topics. But a lot of times it'll be stuff about like, what is your teaching? Like your interest in teaching, like what's your philosophy there? A little bit about your research, because they want to see like, are you a good fit with the department? Are you addressing needs that they have? But also you can ask them questions about like, what they want. It's a lot of this interview stuff it goes both ways. You're interviewing them as well. But yeah, it goes application to then like that Zoom interview. And then I think the next call I got was like for a visit. So then you do like a day or two. You kind of, a lot of times we'll have like an itinerary that you go through. You meet a lot of the faculty. Sometimes they'll take you out to dinner. But like you meet faculty, you give a job talk. You'll usually expect to give like a research talk and a teaching demonstration. Sometimes you'll do one, sometimes you won't do the other. And yeah, you just go around and meet everybody, get interviewed, talk to the chair. And it's kind of an exhausting affair. It's just a nonstop like day and a half where they fly you out, walk you through everything, throw every bit of information at you, and then you go. And then at least for me, that was it. It was like two things.
Thank you. So the next question is from Zhiyuan. So what type of questions were typically asked during this like initial set of screening interviews?
Yeah, just like the John mentioned, I think were pretty standard questions. I think from my limited experience, the first question is always why us? Why you choose us? Why are you interested in this application? So make sure that you have the list of the reasons why you specifically pick this university institution, and also make sure that you tailor your question to the specific school university. And followed by why us? I think the other question is very standard. Talk about your research experience. So I think the suggestion for this question, you don't want to go over 5 minutes, for example. You just want to make your research experience very short, very concise. Give the big picture of what you are doing and what your future research direction would be. So that is the research experience. So followed by research experience question will be the teaching experience. So if you have experience of being instructor, so make sure that you emphasize that. I think that would be valuable. If you do not have the experience of being instructor, you can also mention that you will be the TA before. So make sure you mention how you engage students in the discussion, how you interact with the students. I think that's quite important. And the third question may or may not is a case that how you incorporate your teaching and research into the DEI values. If you have any experience about the contributing to the DEI, make sure you mention that. And I think the last question is also very standard. Do you have any questions for us? So make sure that you ask some non-trivial questions to them, so that you can engage more discussion. So I think these are all pretty standard questions during this Zoom or phone interview. I'm not sure John or Aditya want to add more on the different types of questions during the Zoom interview.
Thank you for sharing.
I do have something real quick that I think you touched on a really good point there, Zhiyuan, about like knowing when they ask like why us. I mean, I highly recommend as part of your search. I mean, I know there are options where you have to. I mean, as part of your search, really find institutions that you want to work at. You're going all through this. I mean, especially if you're getting your PhD and you're trying to get a job, like, do something you want to do. Be able to talk with them about like, I want to go here because I want to go here. If you want to go to an R1, you want to do research, fight for that. I understand there are certain spots where like, okay, well, I can't quite go there right now. I've got to do what I need to do right now to get there. And that's part of the journey. And you have to kind of mitigate that sort of discussion in these conversations. But when possible, I mean, seriously, take the time right now to think about what you want to do and why. That answer could change next year. It could change in 2 years or 3 years or 5. You can't plan too far in advance for that. What you've got to do right now is just reflect on that, because it makes a lot of these questions and a lot of these processes a lot easier in my experience. And from what I can tell, like if you know what you want and you can communicate that to the employer throughout, all these interview interactions and whatnot, they want to find someone whose goals line up with what they want, right? So if they can find someone that meshes well with that, it tends to work out better for them, because there's not a ton of OR grads coming out. There's not a ton of there are a limited number of professor positions, but like they want to find someone that works in the department and works towards their goal. So try to find that. It can really help you.
Great points. Thanks for sharing. And as part of the following this question, Aditya, how did you handle any technical or logistical challenges during the phone interviews or other interviews? Were there any special questions that surprised you, maybe other than the ones that Zhiyuan and John mentioned, or is it just a regular expected?
So the questions were more or less similar to what John and Zhiyuan mentioned. There were no surprise questions as such, but there was one interviewer, one person from the hiring committee in specific, who I had an opportunity to meet him in the onset interview as well. And he mentioned that all they were looking for in a new faculty was how enthusiastic they were in joining their department, or in joining that particular school. So if it is possible, I'm not saying to be overly enthusiastic about something, but at least try and show them that you like this is what you want. So if you can like convey that, convince them in that particular fashion, I believe everything else is I mean, they will like neglect a few of your um like some things that you are not really good at. They will like just ignore them, and they'll still gauge you on what you know and how enthusiastic you are about that particular position. And also, so one thing that really helped me was aligning what I plan to teach or aligning what I want to do there with some of the initiatives that they currently are starting. So in one of the universities, they were starting to build a new research center for industry academia collaboration. So I tweaked my answers, or I tweaked all of my focus onto that. I want to contribute to, say, academia industry collaborations, and how will the facilities that are available at your university help me become a good professor? Because ultimately, they also want to know how they can benefit you. It's not just how you can benefit the department, but what are your long-term goals for personal development? So if you can align those with the current um, initiatives that the university has, it really stands out.
Great points. Thanks for sharing. And do you guys remember what questions you asked them? Because that's what I think Zhiyuan also mentioned. That's part of the interview as well, to have some questions to ask them.
I have a couple thoughts. I mean, I remember a couple things, but for me, it's like I really wanted to go somewhere that cared about teaching. So I would ask them about, like, important teaching things to me. Like, how do they interact with students? What's their expectations for teaching? And also, like, how do they, with new faculty, do they have like an onboarding process for teaching? Do they just give you one course that you need to work on, or do you get materials that are kind of already existing, or do you have to make your own materials? Do they give you multiple different courses? Do you get like a lighter load your first couple of years? Like, how do they onboard you with that? Conversely, I do have a question that a bunch of people warned me not to ask. It wasn't something I really thought about, but people warned me, don't ask about like how you get tenure. From what I hear, a lot of people don't. I mean, it's like, especially if you start to get out here and you're like, everyone's like worrying about it and stuff, and it's like, don't ask about it, because then it'll look like you're just looking for a checklist to get the things done, and that's not really how the tenure process totally works, at least at most institutions. And a lot of times too, it kind of almost just annoys the committee or annoys the chair. It annoys anybody you ask about it. They will tell you everything you need to know about it as you go and as you get acclimated. I think rather than worrying about exactly how to get tenure, just focus on, making yourself as marketable as possible as you go through everything. You do the research and do the teaching that you think is the best that you can do. That's all that you can control. The tenure committee where you're at, will either like it or they won't. And then if you've done a good job, if they don't like it, you'll just say, well, I'll just go somewhere else. They'll appreciate me. And try to take that mindset forward with it. But like, highly recommend, do not ask during your interviews how tenure goes. They will let you know when you need to know, but don't bother them about it.
Thanks for the heads up. That's really helpful. Zhiyuan, Aditya, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think you can ask like, do you have any support for the new faculty here? What research center that a university or department has that I can contribute to? So that is a one type of question to ask for support. The second question is very trivial, is to ask what is a typical day look like for the new faculty? So because you are going to be the new faculty, the typical day would definitely apply to you. So you can just ask the typical day. Yeah, I think that is two questions I prepared for my Zoom interview.
Thank you.
For me, I just like I didn't have enough experience in teaching, so I was for all of the interviews, I just asked them if they have any teaching resources or like anything to evaluate my teaching style, and that's something that they really appreciated, because all you want to do is like ask some questions which will genuinely help you as a new faculty uh, get better, get better with teaching, get some evaluation or feedback from them. I also asked them if there is a chance that I can get some mentorship in research or like in navigating through the challenges as a new faculty. And most of the universities or most of the interview committees will mention about all of these things if you ask them politely about what things or like what resources you can get from the department or the university.
To add on to that, I mean, just like I think one thing you said there was like it's important to just ask questions that you actually want the answers to. I find like don't like it's like just think about the things you actually want to know when you get there. Now, I know some of that can be hard, but you guys have both just listed things that I thought were like I wouldn't have thought of at first. So like those are great. But like they're saying, like most places have like a center for teaching and learning or something. And they'll be happy to tell you about what's resources those offer. But just think about the things that you're like, what is this like? You know, and they might even be able to say, you know, that's not really something you have to deal with here. You know, that's a great question. And the worst case is that you just learn something new that way. Like, I don't think that normally reflects poorly. They know that you're a new grad coming into the workforce. Like, they know what their expectations are there. Don't try to be something you're not, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because a lot of places too are really excited for someone who's excited to learn and isn't too good to learn, you know, or too difficult to work with, or too scared, too proud to ask questions.
Great points. Thanks for sharing them. So then next question is to John. Can you walk us through the structure of your side interviews? I remember you mentioned that you were actually invited quite soon to the side interview and got the offer sooner than usual. Can you walk us through that? And then Zhiyuan and Aditya, feel free to add any points from your experiences.
Yeah, for mine, I got invited out the end of November. So I mean, the process, you know, they say, hey, we'd like to invite you for an in-person interview. And they invited me out there, and they just, you know, they organize your flights. I think most of the times, I mean, I've never heard of an opportunity where they didn't fly you out or pay for your fare or whatever. They get you somewhere to stay, and they just kind of give you an itinerary usually in advance that says, okay, here you're going to meet with the provost here, you're going to meet with the chair at this time, we're going to meet with the assistant professors, you know, all these things. So it gives you an agenda, an itinerary to handle, but then that also allows you to kind of craft some questions that you want to ask different people. You know, there are some places where, you know, if you're going to have an opportunity with the assistant professors, that can sometimes be a door to ask, like, you know, what is assistant professor like? Like, what's it really like here, especially if you're new? You know, do they expect you to really, really, really grind it out? Are you allowed to have some semblance of work-life balance? You know, what is really happening versus what, you know, the hiring committee and everyone else is telling you? It's like you can start to kind of piece that out. Now, you may need to be a little diplomatic about how you ask some of those things. You can't just say, hey, is it terrible here? That usually might not go over so well, but you can kind of piece some of that information out and pull it out of them. And some may be very willing to say, hey, you know, there's some tough times, because a lot of times I think what you'll get is something like, you know, it's generally a nice balance here. You know, we have structure, but given the nature of the institution, like I'm at a I think technically a liberal arts college, but like we have to do all the grading, you know, and whatnot. So we're generally, you know, we're busy with that, but it really picks up around specifically exams. So they're like, okay, you know, normally it's very, very manageable, but then exam week is like, oh, that's a lot we got to get in. And we also, again, partially, I think federal institution wise, there's like certain dates we have to have exams in, hard deadline in the middle of the semester. So like little things like that you kind of get to pick up and learn. And a lot of times, at least on the one visit I did, just get an opportunity to do another one. They hired me, but you'll hear like a lot of stuff from the top down, you know, or like from the bottom up. You'll hear it across a lot of places, so you can start to piece together, okay, this is really how this is, because it's like everybody at every level is telling me this. But the other thing is that like when you get an opportunity to meet with like some of these people, like the provost and the chair, you can start to get an idea of like what is the direction of the university, you know, what is the direction of the department, you know, does it align with what you want? Are they saying some things that you're like, hey, this doesn't align with what I want? You can start to ask some of those questions. And again, it comes back to saying, figure out what you want so that you, especially on the spot, can say like, well, what you're saying, you know, raises a red flag for me, or it raises a green flag. And I kind of want to inquire further to say, okay, yeah, you are doing the things in the way that I want to see them done and I want to interact with, and you can kind of interview them about it. But for me, they surprisingly didn't have a teaching demonstration. We just did our research talk. But because of that, depending on if you need to give a research talk to just faculty or just OR faculty or just industrial engineering faculty, like you need to be cognizant of like who you're talking to. Like don't give a talk like they've been looking over your shoulder while you're doing all your research. Give a talk that shows that you know what you're doing, you can explain why it matters, and a little bit of the technical detail to show that like, okay, he really does know what he's doing. But like I think in my opinion, it's valuable to make it explainable and like understandable to the general audience of who you're talking to. If you know who they are and they've all been doing the same research for 20 years, then probably should make it pretty technical. But a lot of times you'll get like a mix of the department and maybe some students. So make sure they can understand it.
Great points. Thanks for sharing. So were there any unexpected challenges for site interviews? Asking all of you.
My fiance got into a car accident while I was on it, so I had to kind of mitigate, making sure she was okay. But that was at the end of the interview, so it wasn't like too stressful. But it was just a matter of saying like, "Hey, I've got to go take this call," and then she's got a bad concussion. Okay, but yeah, nothing actually academically wise, except that like, life still does happen, and the committee you're working with, is understanding of that, and you can kind of work within that structure.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, if there are no additional points, let's move to the next question. Zhiyuan, how can one best prepare for site interviews, in your opinion?
Yeah, if you got the on-site invitation, congratulations. I think that is a big success, meaning that they probably just send out the 3 to 5 top candidates and to invite them for the on-site interview. So if you are in that stage, meaning that your chance of being hired or getting offer is much higher than the previous stages. So I think for the on-site interview, always ask for the agenda in advance. So make sure you know what is your full schedule is, right? And you know what the faculty you are meeting with. So that is kind of the big chunk of this on-site interview, which is a one-on-one meeting. So you have probably the 30 minutes or just 1 hour to meet each different faculty. So make sure you know their name. If you have time, you can also just check their research areas so that you can pick some topics to discuss. I don't really have the good strategy for this because, I think that each faculty may have the different, ways. I think my suggestion would be just go with the flow. Some faculty, they are very talkative. They love talking about their research. If that is the case, just allow them to talk and you can just be the good listener. And some faculty also love to talk about, food, location, their children, then just listen. I think that is a kind of like strategy, just to go with the flow for the one-on-one meeting. Another part of the on-site interview is the job talk. So I think on the bright side, you can fully control it because this is your job talk. This is all about your research. But on the other side, it's going to be challenging because you probably need to make the cohesive story of what is your research you are doing, right? You may have the diverse portfolio of your research projects, which is good because you can show this is a breadth and depth of my expertise, but somehow you need to make it a story to make the big picture into your job talk, and your different research project can fit into this big picture. So that is about the job talk, which is very crucial. And also, I think another part will be the dinner, I think, with the search committee. I think just make sure that you know some eating etiquette, eating manners. Don't pick some food that is too hard to chew while you are talking. So yeah, I think that is just my few suggestions.
Thanks for sharing those. Okay, so Aditya, I'm not sure if you had to face any difficult or off-the-cuff question, but like if you did, do you have any advice on how to handle them?
I had like I won't say it was like a difficult to handle question, but once I got the agenda, I looked through who I'll be having one-on-ones with. And for one particular faculty, his research area and mine were like matching pretty well. So I prepared all of my like for his talk, like one-on-one with him. I prepared all of my research questions and everything to talk about research. But turns out that he was there to ask me about teaching, and he wanted to know how my research can be kind of uh, directed towards some teaching objectives or like to train students. So that was something slightly unexpected and made it difficult. And in one of the other interviews or the other on-site interviews, um, right after my job talk, I had put in some concepts in my job talk, which I thought were kind of everyone at that particular level would know, especially the students. But some of the committee members pointed out that students not necessarily know all of these concepts. So how would you go into greater depths of understanding, like making them understand what concepts they need to know? And if a student is right out of the high school and he doesn't really know or doesn't really understand what you are trying to say, how will you make sure that he is still interested in learning about it? And how will you go about analyzing or assessing if he has um, kind of passed all the learning objectives? So those were somewhat difficult questions because I didn't prepare for them in advance, and they were like shot at me right at the moment. So it was difficult to navigate through them. But apart from that, especially during job talks, what helped me was showing them a very big picture, showing them something very with bells and whistles, and making sure that all of the especially the students and those who are not in my field get attracted towards what I am trying to say, and then let that attraction like seep through for all of the 1 hour or 45 minutes that I had, and then get into greater details of what my research is about or like what I am trying to do, so that it gives them a good impression, especially to the students, that the faculty will be very fun to interact with. At the same time, some senior faculties, they really want to know what your research is or what your contribution is. So even they get a sense of the real merit behind your research. So because at the end, even the students that are present in the during your job talk will be asked whether they like the professor or not, or whether they like the talk or not. So this really helps if you can make sure that you attract all of the crowd equally.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I know it's not that hard for you to attract students, especially because you won for 2 consecutive years the awards for your research pictures. So I'm sure like just showing them in your presentations helped a lot. Thanks for sharing all these points. So let's move to the next part about challenges. We actually covered some parts of it, but John, what were the like biggest challenge you faced during the academic job search?
Honestly, it was putting the material together and feeling comfortable and confident doing it, and then like locating the places that his mission seemed to match what I was looking for. Like I think all of that was really the biggest challenge, because once you started meeting with people and talking with them, it was really just a matter of like, doing what you can to make it work. But it's not a challenge at that point. You've thought about what you want, you've thought about why you want it, and I thought about, I'd done all my research, so I was just talking, having conversations and asking them what I wanted to know, and answering whatever they wanted to know. So that part of it always felt, although I think exhausting, wasn't necessarily challenging, in the same sense. It's because you're just talking about what you know. I mean, granted, it's like sitting there and being ready for any question and being on the whole time is a challenge. But I think comparatively, all of the prep for it is the hard part. Even just finishing the PhD is the hard part
I
by
agree.
comparison.
Yeah, so the next question is actually following on the last point you mentioned. So, Zhiyuan, when we are actually applying, we are still a PhD student. We have so many different responsibilities. We are trying to finish up our dissertation, maybe teaching, maybe TAing, and everything like is at its like highest level of responsibility. How did you balance your responsibilities while pursuing these new opportunities, managing, applying? And I'd love to hear it actually from all of you, but let's hear it first from Zhiyuan.
For me, just to squeeze my sleeping time. I'm just joking. I think my strategy would be just, give some of the priority for the very important tasks. For example, the tasks have the deadline, like the Zoom interview or submit application or paper revision submission. They all have the specific deadline. So make sure that you put your first priority to those tasks with the deadline. And then for those tasks who may not have the deadline, you can just postpone those tasks. But again, this is a very challenging for me. I'm still learning how to better manage my time. But the strategy I just mentioned is just priority-based tasks.
Thanks for sharing. Any other details from John or Aditya? I think basically goes down to time management, right? But
yeah,
maybe any kind of techniques you use you'd like to share.
Oh, I'm very poor at time management, so let's not hear from me.
I mean, we're all in the same boat here, and I think maybe a decent chunk of PhD students are like this anyway. Yeah, I don't have any real valuable, real like, hey, this worked for me, this was great. Rather, do what you need to do to get the job done. The same way that you're doing it to finish up the PhD anyway, you'll find what works. I mean, the biggest recommendation I can have is not try to like wait for a perfect time to get it all done and like this great window spot. Just give yourself like 30 minutes a day to work on it and say, okay, 30 minutes or an hour, I'm going to work on my materials. An hour, I'm going to do this. Like, just keep the things moving and don't try to like, don't be try to like balance the plates and the tasks separately. It can maybe result in this like cascading effect. But again, you know that. You know what your time management is like. And find what works for you. Remarkable advice.
I mean, that's all really helpful because you all went this journey, and like your experiences is really valuable to us who are currently managing different types of tasks at the same time. So before moving to the next topic on additional topics and considerations, is there any point missing from the interview process and application process that I might have missed and you'd like to share your points on?
There is one. I'm just thinking of all the things that people told me as I was going through it. Just because someone else gets chosen for an application or a job doesn't say anything about you. All right. Like, especially if you go in the academic world and you can see like, oh, who they did hire, and you're like, I'm better than them or anything else. It's like their departments are looking for a certain kind of thing, and it's just kind of, as much as the candidates are qualified just as you are most likely qualified for these positions, and it's just, what are they looking for? What are the opinions of the committee members? And just what's the luck of the draw? Because when you've got like 3 qualified candidates or 5 qualified candidates come for a visit, you've got to find some way to whittle it down. And like, don't beat yourself up if like things don't go the exact way you want the first time. Like, and I don't recommend going to like watch and look and see who they did hire, and comparing yourself to them, because it just doesn't bring you any value, and it doesn't say anything about who you are, or as an academic or a researcher, or as a person. I mean, if you get feedback like, hey, you're not friendly, and like, you hit us on the way in, it's like, okay, maybe do some self-reflection. But like, for the general things, you did your best, you're nice enough, things like that. It's not just like, don't take it personal.
Just to add on to this, so you actually can be like much more qualified or like much more appropriate for that particular role. But when you look at the candidates they hired, from the student perspective or from the applicant's perspective, we don't really know what's going behind. But now when you come to the university, you know that they have some certain requirements on what kind of candidate they want to hire, because to either to maintain the diversity or to like aid in a new program that they are planning to do or something on those lines. So that's not in your hands. So you don't really have the clear picture of what the university is wanting to hire because they cannot publicly display it. So even if some universities don't hire you and hire someone who you feel is like not as superior as you are like, don't downgrade yourself just based on that. It's always like they wanted someone to fit the jigsaw puzzle and better than you can.
Those are all really valuable. Thanks for sharing the
I also
points.
want to add one more thing that even though they are interviewing you, you are also interviewing them. So I think if you can switch that mindset, it would be probably more, comfortable in dealing with the different situations. You are also interviewing them. Yep.
True. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's true. So the next part that I was wondering was like, how important was networking in your job search, and what strategies did you use to network effectively? But also, I have a question that can fall into the same category. Like when you are mentioning, I think Aditya mentioned that like he knew there was this new research center opening up at one of the positions he was seeking, and he kind of tailored his questions around like how he can contribute to that, or like how his research is complementary to that, and how that can help to his field. I was wondering like how to find these details if they are not posted on their like social media or their websites. Do you recommend reaching out to other people working there, other faculty members who can maybe help you be better prepared for these interviews?
So about the opening, I was fortunate enough that they had like it all over their website. So their webpage described what they were planning to do in the next future or what their goals are. Sometimes some of the job postings also um, write briefly about their long term or like their next 5 year goals. So if you can align that with what you speak during the interview, it really helps. And sometimes it's always also better to especially go and check the web pages of new faculties, because they are very proactive in kind of showing their research off. So you and like trying and getting associated with some of the initiatives that the university is currently pursuing. So you can get a sense of what is the general tone of the university, or where what is the direction that they are heading into, just by looking at their faculty web pages, or some of their like student success web pages. So that essentially gives you a better sense of what you can expect from the university, and how you can essentially tailor your application as well as your interview, your answers to what they are trying to do. And as for networking, to be very frank, I was not very much into getting into academia till almost August end. So all of my conferences were done till then. But in one of the conferences, I did talk to a few of the new hires and checked with them about what their interview process was. But as for networking, I didn't do much. I mean, it will definitely help, but uh, I didn't do it. So I won't be in the right place to answer this.
Thanks for sharing your experience. John, do you have something to
As you
add?
might expect, I have something to say. I never really intentionally networked because I don't know. Like I should say, with like the focus of like I'm gonna go meet these people for it to be maybe useful for me or something. I don't know if people actually do that or not. But the outside of that is, if you just go talk to people, interact at random points, it can be super valuable. Like for me, I wouldn't have heard of this job, I don't think, initially at least, if I hadn't talked to someone a year before at a random like one of the mixers like Texas Tech put on, because I went to visit a previous a faculty member that used to be at UB, named Ninji. I went to go see him at the Texas Tech meetup or whatever. They always have good food at Informs at the Texas Tech like mixer there, or social. So I went to go see him, and then I ended up talking, I think, to the chair of their department briefly about something, and then I ran into him at Informs last year, and I was just talking about what I was looking for, and he was like, "Oh, I know someone you should talk to." Because that's what they said, and they went to go work there, and they're really happy. So I was like, okay. So that's what I did. So like networking to me has been, crucial, just like word of mouth, even just that side of like hearing about opportunities that line up. Because then you're able to just talk about what you want, and someone that knows something can say like, hey, I know somewhere that might be a really good fit for you. Go talk to them, and that's useful.
Thanks for sharing. So the next question is evaluating multiple job offers. I think like Aditya can answer best since you mentioned that you had different site visits.
Oh, so for me, the like Cal Poly was my very first interview, and I was really impressed by what the department is doing and how friendly they were. My next interview was also at another Cal Poly, and even they were like very, I would say, um, welcoming, and everything else was really good. So it was a very difficult choice between the two. And there was one more interview, but in that school, I could sense that there is no sync between the upper management and the faculties. So I could really feel um, the faculty is not talking greatly about their dean of research, or their other like higher management personnels. So that was a red flag for me, because if there is no unanimity in the department or in the college, there is no point in like starting your career there. And for the um, evaluation part, my few of my considerations were, where is it possible for me to set up my own research, start, because all of the universities that I went to had like a major focus on teaching, but I am more interested in doing some research. I'm more interested in like uh, um applying for some funding opportunities. So I just checked which university is more open to helping me with developing my research, also location. So I wanted to be as close to the Bay Area as possible, because I have a lot of family there. My fiance stays there, so I wanted to be closer to the Bay. At the same time, I wanted a peaceful city rather than getting into, say, something like Chicago or LA. I wanted to be at a place where I don't really hear people honking at me every few minutes. So I chose this place.
Thanks for sharing your like process of decision making. And so the next question goes to Zhiyuan. Did you engage in negotiations for your offer, like salary, startup funds, teaching load, and like how do you think is the best approach, the best way to approach these negotiations?
Yeah, I think the best approach for negotiating the offer is that you do your homework. For example, if you want to increase your, for example, startup funding, so you need to make sure that you have the list. So why I need to spend more money on my startup, right? You probably want to hire more students. If you want to, buy some equipment or set up your, lab. I think those are the reasonable reasons. Make sure you do your homework before you negotiate. So honestly, I don't have too many experience for negotiating the offer, so
Thanks for sharing your opinions. John, Aditya, do you have anything to add to this one?
Nothing really to add other than, I mean, what Zhiyuan said was, have a reason. Always, like, don't just say like, hey, I want more money. It's like, I mean, have something to back it up with. I need more money because of this. I need more money because I'm moving across the country and I need somewhere to, like, I need to be able to buy a house in this cost of living, and stuff like that. When you're negotiating, because it gives them, very clear room to work with, and then you can kind of go back and forth. But I only got to negotiate on a small piece of my process, because for us, they're like, this is what you start at. Who are you going to talk to? The president? But yeah.
Oh, so for me, things were slightly different. And that's because, like, once you get into your on-site interview, like, all the negotiations will take place at the very last, is the very last step before you accept the offer. So when I got on in the on-site interview, I kind of looked through what facilities that they have. And there, I also talked with the chair about what are the different funding opportunities that the university currently has. And fortunately, they had some good amount of funding in manufacturing, and especially in additive manufacturing. So I could, and this being a teaching university, the startups are not super great. So I could at least squeeze in some bit of that additive manufacturing money into my startup to essentially tell them that, okay, I will be actively working on developing new technologies or developing new programs for student research or like graduate projects. So I just need more money into that. So that's the only place I could kind of negotiate. But again, the negotiations generally are better if you are into R1s, because I have known people who negotiated almost a 25% hike in their startup funds, because the university had those funds, and also they were like R1 universities. So, and also the research was actually in need of that much amount of money. So it kind of depends on what level you are operating, like what university you're approaching or applying to. And it's not that great to haggle more than needed, because at the end they are like, we have other candidates, so instead of you haggling, we'll just like go with someone else. Because ultimately what they are trying to see is they want someone to be in the community or be in the academic world for not just 1 or 2 years, but like for say 10, 20 years. So they want to make good friends with you. They want good people to be in the university. So they don't really appreciate you haggling for very tiny things, because you can ultimately get them once you get into the university. You can obviously make some ways to get more money out of it. So
Great points. Thanks for sharing. And this question goes to all of you. How did you manage relocation logistics and like personal considerations when accepting the position? And were there like any support from the university provided?
oh, the university generally supports you. They generally allow like give you some amount for relocation, and also help you. There are some um, like local organizations with the university has tied up with, and they help you with finding accommodation or like getting settled in the new place.
I would actually recommend on um, ask them about that though when you're talking to them. Like when you start to get to like on-site interviews and whatnot, that can be like a great thing to ask about, because most have that, but some do not, or some it's like very limited in what they can do. Just because of like the way their budgeting works or something else, they can be like, oh, all we can do is this amount, or we don't have any additional like resources, but here's what the other assistant professors have done, recently, and that can be a good resource for that. But it just depends.
Great. So the last question from me, and then we'll move to the audience questions, is there any like key pieces of advice that you'd give to current students or recent graduates aiming for academic positions related to IE? They could be like both the students who are thinking about it right now, or who are also like in the job market this semester. I mean, your speaks like all the things that you mentioned so far were like key advices, but if there are any other points missed that you'd like to add.
A piece of advice I got, and I know part of it is the perspective I have on academia. But if you're gonna go for an academic, like a professor position, even if it's R1 or it's mostly research focused, I think you've got to want to teach a little bit. Like you've got to enjoy that a little bit, because no matter how little of a part of a job it is a part of the job, and I think you owe it to the students to care. I mean, I think you can make it by without caring, but I recommend exploring other avenues if you don't like to teach. I mean, there are some positions that are just like, all I do here is research, and those exist at academic places. So yeah, but like don't count out going to like a lab or working with a company for research if you don't like teaching. But on that note, try to get some exposure to teaching, whether it's even just leading a recitation section, or if you can get a full class to teach. I really recommend it, to just get an idea of like, do I like this? Do I not like this? Because I think like Aditya was saying, it's a long career. They're looking for a long career, and I mean, you can always change, but I mean, I think it's an important part of the profession that is often overlooked, and be willing to take criticism on how you teach. I feel like we often and take criticism in everything you do, really, because we often, we get our PhD and we think, oh, I'm great, I know what I'm doing, or some of us do, and sometimes forget they need to they still make mistakes, and there's still a lot to learn.
Thanks for sharing those, and that's coming from someone who has won an award on his teaching at UB. So for those who don't know that and listening, make sure you also work on the teaching, because that can actually show that you're carrying on developing the next generation of learners who care about learning, understanding new topics, going for difficult concepts. And also Zhiyuan also won an award for his teaching, so I'm so proud of both of you. And it's great to have your opinions on these topics.
Yeah, just want to add on that. Just keep it simple, just get it prepared and be professional and be confident. I think you're all great, so you'll be fine. So yeah.
So I know Aditya's time was limited.
Oh no, the meeting was postponed, so I have time. So
Okay,
surprisingly, I am the one who has a meeting pop up, so I actually have to go. But it's
thanks
been
for
really
joining
great.
us, John. It was great having you, and thanks for sharing all these great insights on academic jobs.
Thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to email me. I forget if you've posted my email anywhere, you're welcome to.
Post
At
it
least
on
just for the people here right now. Maybe don't send it out on like LinkedIn or something.
Oh, sure.
But it's great to see everyone again, Aditya and Zhiyuan. It's great to see you. Are you guys going to be at Informs this year?
That'll be in the
I
fall.
won't be there.
Okay, well,
Are
see you
going
guys
to
around then when we get a chance
I'll be
to.
missed.
I'll be there this year.
Nice.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, good to see you, John. Bye.
So there are some questions from the audience. So Gabriel asks, since most positions start at the beginning of the academic year, what do you recommend for students that are graduating by the end of fall semester and want to work in academia? Do you have any opinion on that?
On that line, some of the positions, especially some big universities like Purdue, Arizona State, I guess University of Washington and others, they generally hire so for spring as well, or like they hire for like 1.5 year in advance. So you can always target those positions. And although the hiring generally takes place in fall, you can always kind of start seeking out those opportunities. And once you get to that interview level, you can just tell them about your graduation timeline. And they sometimes do agree with that, because I had a good friend of mine who also works at UB. So he graduated in late summer and he wanted to spend 3 months just doing nothing. So he did nothing and joined UB in spring of 2024. So in computer science. So it is always possible to do that. It is always possible to negotiate that. And if the committee likes you, they will wait for some time. So
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, just echo what Aditya have said. I think for the spring, they do have some of the openings. So the good part is that they may have less competitive applicants. So that is a good part for the spring, applicants. Yeah.
Great. So there was one other question from Zara asking, is there any question you regret not asking when you were going through these interviews? And then you later realized its importance.
for me, it was not a question, but it was something that I said, which I shouldn't have said. So in my very first Zoom interview, they asked me whether I was confident teaching one particular course, and I didn't know that they were specifically looking for someone to teach that course, like all the other things on one side, and they wanted someone to teach that particular course. And while I had some experience teaching that, I bluntly said that I have not taught that course in the past few years, so I'm not sure if I can teach it. So from my perspective, I was being very brutally honest about it. but from their perspective, they got it as I'm not willing to kind of mold myself to teach that particular course. So that is something that, I mean, don't be very frank about some things that you want to say. Diplomacy always helps, especially in like until you get to know them better. Once you get to know them better, then it's you can be as honest as you want. But at least till you get to the interview stage or till you get the offer, be a bit diplomatic and be no, I won't say like just mold your way according to what they say, but try to be a little bit flexible into what you want to do and what they expect. So that really helps out.
Yeah, I
Thanks
think for me, I don't really have, the things that I regret I didn't ask. So I think, of course, if I'm very interested in this job position, I have tons of the questions I want to ask, but due to the time limit, you can only pick the few questions that are very important to you to ask. I think the most of the questions you can just search online, so you can just find the answer from, from the Google. So yeah.
And there was another question on the salary ranges. I know each one of you went into different directions of industrial engineering, and based on type of school that might change. But the reason behind asking this was for them to know at least like the range, so that when they receive the offer, they can actually kind of understand whether there is a need to negotiate or not. If you're
So yeah, of course. Generally speaking, private universities they pay more. Uh, and for public universities, they are limited by how much they can pay, but they have some really good health benefits and some other benefits. Something like California State Universities have a retirement plan. So instead of like investing into a 401k, you get a pension after you retire. So if you consider all of those benefits, most of them will end up being quite similar because, and again, academic salaries are nowhere compared to the industry salaries. Industry will pay you a hell lot of money. But again, considering all the other aspects and considering if you are passionate about being into academia, it is comfortable to the salaries are comfortable, but you might say get a call from a university in Florida where the average salaries are for assistant professors are about 75 to $80,000. And in California, they might be somewhere around $110,000. But if you look at the tax structure in California and the tax structure in Florida, the cost of living here and the cost of living there, even 70,000 is more than enough for you to comfortably survive. Whereas 110 might not be very good if you are looking to live in say San Jose or San Francisco. So you might want to consider uh, what location you are going to, and are those salaries enough to match for the cost of living? Because sometimes some state universities, especially I have interviewed with a lot of California state universities. So the thing is, they have a fixed range and they cannot like go much beyond that range. And that range will be the same even if you are interviewing at say San Jose or say Fresno, whereas the cost of living at San Jose and Fresno is vastly different. So you might want to consider all of that when negotiating your salaries. Oh,
And
and one more thing, you can also negotiate for summer commitment. So summers are generally unpaid, but you can also ask them if you can get paid in summer through some professional development funds or something else, just to ease your kind of load for the first 1 or 2 years, and then essentially till the time you get to writing grants or till the time you get start getting funding.
just a side note that actually for the private public universities, you can look into it online to check the salaries of the professor for those public schools. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yes, I forgot to add that. Mhm.
Great. So we've come to the end of our discussions, I guess, because there are no more questions. And I'm also done with all my questions. If there's any points you'd like to add, please go forward. Great. So once again, on behalf of the Informed Student Chapter at UB, I would like to thank you, our dear friends and panelists. Thanks for giving back to the community. And also it was really nice to hear some friendly voices helping us to better tailor our applications and better prepared for the academic jobs next. Thank you both, Aditya, Zhiyuan, and John, who left, but hopefully he'll see this later. And we are so glad for you and wish you all a really successful career in academia and hope to always celebrate all your successes in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
very
And
much.
please feel free to reach out with any questions if you have. If you have not, please share the emails as well. I will try and reply to those emails as soon as I can. So,
Yeah, and I wish all of you best of luck. Yeah.
yes.
Thank you both. Sure. We'll probably post a LinkedIn page on our LinkedIn page, and there we'll mention that if there is any questions from the audience, we can reach out to you directly. And we'll also post a YouTube video later on our YouTube channel and also on the LinkedIn post, so that everyone who missed it due to their time limitations or other occupancies can watch it later. Thank you so much again, and wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.